Hey guys, Crypto Sunday, although it's Saturday night. Kind of thought Bitcoin had bottomed out sort of yesterday, a little bit earlier than gold and silver, sort of in all the Fed chair announcement shenanigans. But yeah, we've gone down quite a bit over the weekend, which is a little bit sort of unusual given the past few months. Nothing sort of much of anything seems to happen at the weekend, except maybe sort of Sunday afternoon in anticipation for markets opening. So yeah, Saturday afternoon or evening is a little bit strange for sort of Bitcoin and crypto. But yeah, down 17% for the week. Bit of a bloodbath. Everything's down double figures, including Bitcoin. And yeah, I mean, looking at the CoinShares report, this was for week before last, of course, 1.73 billion in outflows. Going to get another one tomorrow. Negative, of course. And yeah, everyone's expecting this is the bear market, 4-year cycle, sort of coming to fruition. I'm still sort of not really a believer in that. Obviously, somewhat being proven wrong by it being down, 35% or whatever we are. Yeah, looking at flows by asset, Bitcoin 1.09 billion of outflows, 630 of Ethereum. Multi-asset just continues to be down regardless of whether the others are up or down, it seems. 2025 flows sort of negative 214 million, as I pointed out last week, with sort of positive on absolutely everything else. XRP minus 18 million, but Solana positive 17 million, so a bit of a divergence there. A little bit into Litecoin, quite a big amount of SUI outflow, 6 million. They've only got assets under management of 155, sorry. 17 million in inflow in 2025, and then you've just had 6 in 1 week. So 17 million for the whole year, and then 6 million outflow in 1 week. Similar story, slightly differently with Chainlink. Sort of only 22 million inflow last year and 3.8 million inflow in just a week. So quite good for Chainlink. A little bit into short Bitcoin and 6 million into other coins. Looking at the country breakdown, not a huge amount to see here. Small inflows into Canada, Germany and Switzerland, altcoin ETFs, I presume, and yeah, sort of smaller numbers from everywhere else, and obviously 1.8 billion out of the US. And as I say, we're going to get another negative report because we've had almost a full week of outflows again. Monday was sort of very, very quiet. Small sort of inflows from some, small outflows from Fidelity and Bitwise and ARK. Only a sort of 6.8 million net inflow for the day, and then the selling started. You had 4 straight days of BlackRock outflows, which you don't see all that often. You got one last week. And yeah, some reasonably big outflows elsewhere. 5 0 days from Grayscale, and then a 119 million outflow from the new Grayscale as well. So yeah, that on Thursday made an 817 million outflow, and Friday with just a huge one from BlackRock, 509 million overall. So yeah, seen some fairly big numbers this week. Slightly better for Ethereum, but sort of broadly the same. Got net inflow on Monday and Wednesday, and it was 117 million inflow on Monday, all into Fidelity, with sort of BlackRock pulling things down a little bit. but Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday all negative, and everyone was negative actually, not any inflow to any of the ETFs, and 155, 252 million out on Friday. Friday was a bit of a bloodbath, I suppose. And finally, started to see some outflows from Solana. I don't think you can sort of really blame that. Friday, as I say, was a bit mad. Thursday as well. So you got some outflows from the Bitwise ETF on Thursday and Friday, causing a net outflow, 11 million outflow on Friday, but nothing sort of too much. You've had still 678 million of inflow to the Bitwise ETF. Some slightly smaller numbers from Fidelity, and 21 shares still on the negative. So it seems an awfully long while ago now, but Strategy on Monday announced their buy for the previous week. A smaller buy, 2,932 Bitcoin. They had been sort of in double, five figures for three weeks in a row. So it's finally sort of come down at $90,061. So that's not particularly well-timed buy, and they had been buying, as I say, five-figure Bitcoin for 3 weeks, and now we're down to sort of 70, 77, 76,000 pretty much at their average cost. So people will be very critical, I'm sure. So yeah, not exactly great. I think we did wick down below their average cost as well. So yeah, the criticisms will all be coming out. Got the Trump-backed one as well. American Bitcoin looks like they're buying. Increased their total Bitcoin reserve to 5,843 between September the 3rd and January 25th. So quite a sort of slow update from them. A large period to be reporting, but that's quite a lot of Bitcoin. You've had some other sort of notable announcements, sort of Eric Trump, tweeting some of the sort of larger holders, and yeah, not a huge amount else. Strive potentially buying some more after issuing some stock from the looks of it. And yeah, some small purchases, 100 Bitcoin from some of the smaller ones. Metaplanet with new capital raise, so you could be getting some more fairly big buys from them. People sort of digging up pro, I would imagine anything pro Bitcoin that they can from Kevin Warsh. I think some of this bloodbath is still in anticipation of what he might be doing. So when I say bloodbath, it is still not helped whatsoever by leverage traders. I do sort of start to wonder if all of these people had sort of not been doing leverage all this time. We had October the 10th, I think it was, sort of with the $20 billion, I believe, in total leverage wipeout, and just today, last 24 hours, 2.52 billion overall. Again, as sort of we had before, it's more Ethereum than Bitcoin. 1.14 billion in Ethereum liquidations and only 761 in Bitcoin, with a couple hundred million in Sol and then some others. But sort of wonder if all of these people had just bought maybe Ethereum, bought Bitcoin and bought Solana, just spot and held on to it, sort of rather than going 10x and trying to make a fortune. Where would we be? I would imagine much, much higher. Obviously, this leverage does sort of push things in a bull market and, maybe pushes it higher than it otherwise would have gone. But I think you'd get a more steady, as they call it, up and to the right. Not a phrase I like very much. But, a sort of steadier line upwards, rather than this sort of erratic price action and sort of huge drops when you get all this sort of thing forced selling. This has sort of largely come in the last sort of 4 hours. As you can see, 1.84 billion in the last 4 hours. So yeah, we all love leverage. So what isn't generally leverage is the whales, or sort of as they're called, mega whales, blue whales, killer whales, whatever people sort of decide to call them. This I do sort of see this fairly unintuitive chart sort of posted sometimes, and the sort of colours represent whether people are buying or selling, and each row is people who hold a different amount of Bitcoin. So you've got red sort of being, I would imagine, 1 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, 100, or maybe 0.1, and basically the small holders are selling, and the large holders are sort of neutral to accumulating. They're saying maintaining a slightly neutral to or neutral to slightly positive trend. So that's while it's holding 10,000 Bitcoin or more. You could call those mega whales. I think they do still separate or sort of exclude exchanges from that, because they would be more than 10,000 Bitcoin, and don't know whether they sort of exclude treasury companies from that, whether this is just individual people. I can't imagine there's that many individual people out there that hold over 10,000 Bitcoin and would be buying. I think those sort of people have been the ones selling and distributing their Bitcoin to others. But yeah, you've also got entities holding over 1,000, has risen from 1,207 to 1,303. I always wonder with these numbers whether they can sort of identify if it's just like one whale, for example, one person holding 10,000, splitting it up into multiple wallets. That could sort of suggest that say 3 or 4 new people have bought over 1,000 Bitcoin. It could just be one person splitting up their account, and that'll go down as one whale has sold and 3 or 4 new buyers have come in, where actually it's just one person moving some around. So the fact that it's on chain means everyone can look, of course. But yeah, I thought this was interesting numbers. You've seen, you can't zoom in on this chart, but this is number of entities with balance equal to or over 1,000 Bitcoin, and it sort of bottomed in early September and has sort of been rising for the last couple of months, basically. So that's pretty good, especially while sort of Bitcoin has been dropping. Not checked in on Trueflation for a little while, and I probably should have, because we got quite a stark move. Looking at sort of the last year, we had been sort of running up from a low in sort of Liberation Day last year, actually, of sort of mid 1.4%, and it sort of trickled up all the way to 2.7% on December the 13th, 14th, and last month or so, it has been quite strongly coming down. Whether this is sort of base effects and something that happened, a year ago, being removed from the data as time goes by, don't know. But yeah, certainly sort of the last month or so, it's come all the way down to 1.24%, with official inflation numbers still at 2.7%. Potentially, Trueflation hardly follows the official numbers 1-to-1, but I think it can lead sometimes, since this is right up to the minute data, and the sort of BLS official government numbers are a little bit more lagging. So yeah, potentially inflation coming down, and even with Kevin Walsh, who's seen as very, very hawkish, maybe not going to deliver the rate cuts that Trump wants, he might sort of get the chance to if inflation is coming down, and he can say it's not political. If inflation's coming down, then I'm going to cut rates, or we're going to cut rates rather. So he may get a good excuse to. I do love that we're not everybody is, I suppose, but these, articles do draw a lot of attention. JP Morgan sort of weighing in on Bitcoin, gold, silver, and all sorts. Obviously, this isn't Jamie Dimon himself's thoughts. This is employees and analysts working there. But yeah, the sort of headline is potential for $8,500 gold, since we've just had a pullback. A lot of people sort of calling it a blow off top, especially what happened to silver. I don't see that. Don't see that happening. We are allowed a correction. Silver, yes, went up a hell of a lot, but it's only corrected to sort of where it was a few weeks ago. I think people have maybe got short memories, but yeah, they're coming out with their usual sort of technical analysis, and they did give a sort of prediction at the end potentially. Private investor allocation to gold could increase from just above 3% today to 4.6% over the coming years, assuming households continue to replace bond holdings with gold as an equity hedge. Whether some of that could potentially go into Bitcoin, we don't know, but it doesn't seem to be very much sort of safe haven demand at the moment. They are saying, so under that scenario, increasing to just 4.6% of private investors' allocation. There's a theoretical price range of $8,000 to $8,500. That doesn't seem a huge amount, 4.6% to get to $8,500, but I would certainly take that. And yeah, last November they did give a $170,000 Bitcoin target within the next 6 to 12 months. So, 2 months ago saying in 6 months, that only gives us 4 months to go. Maybe it would be the later end of that target. They haven't confirmed whether they are still thinking this target is valid. So Bitcoin hash rate still looking very, very unusual. I believe we've had some of the public miners switching off. I believe Bitdeer were sort of one of the Ethereum focused miners, but had some Bitcoin hash rate, and it sounds like have taken that offline to focus on, well, Ethereum and HPC AI stuff potentially, which is potentially good for Bitcoin miners that are staying with Bitcoin. There is a lot of talk that Bitcoin price sort of can follow the cost to mine, basically, the Bitcoin hash rate and cost to mine. I don't really see it that way. Maybe it does, but yeah. So cost to mine coming down is leading people to say price could potentially come down because there's less of a gap. But we have certainly had a fair old drop. At a drop into below 700 exahash, which was quite the drop. That was sort of Sunday time, and so we've been getting this higher highs and higher lows for the last few days, topping out at just over 1 zettahash for first time in a good few days, and yeah, it's currently sitting at 951, and that is we got a difficulty adjustment, I believe, next Sunday. Sunday, February the 8th, and we're at 11.75 minutes average block time, which this has been coming down ever so slightly. It was sort of 12 minutes or so a couple of days ago, but would still give a nearly 15% drop in Bitcoin difficulty, which would be very, very healthy, I would say, for the miners, people like Hive and Iron that still have an awful lot of hash rate. So we're looking at the 1 year chart, 120, if it sticks roughly around there, would sort of take us to April May time in April May last year on hash rate. So that would be very, very positive. Sort of Hive and Iron and people like that getting quite a few more Bitcoin. Hive have been getting 300 a month. I would expect Their next report for January should be a little bit higher than that, maybe sort of 310, 315 or something. And then if we get this drop next Sunday, then could be quite a bit more for February. So who knows? So just looking at the global liquidity chart, obviously this looks absolutely horrendous now with this sort of recent couple of day drop, and it's sort of coming at a time that the global sort of M2, whether this is actually global, people call this global liquidity, global M2 doesn't necessarily mean that, and I believe a lot of this is coming from Eastern countries, sort of in particular China and Japan, which wouldn't necessarily flow into Bitcoin. A lot of it is flowing into metals. So yeah, the sort of potentially sort of longer term correlation may not sort of jive with this Eastern money printing, because it's not searching for Bitcoin. But nonetheless, we have had the crocodile jaws sort of widen even further. It's got a implied price on this sort of since the ETFs. It's gone up to 270,000 now. Did sort of go up to 285, and sort of Bitcoin at 77,000. Not exactly holding true. Just zooming out to the longer term version. This is the this is Eastern denominated global liquidity. So this is sort of the one that is rising an awful lot more. And yeah, since 2019, it does sort of show still reasonable correlation, but you have these crocodile jaws opening up. This is the largest divergence since 2019 between the two, and again sort of gives a crazy outlandish price of sort of $287,000. Whether we actually go anywhere near that is anybody's guess, or whether this is, it would seem strange for this to be a bear market year. 2018, sort of looking back at 2018, you did get a fair old drop in global liquidity, and 2022 got a similarly large drop. So for a bear market year to be well, admittedly we're only 1 month in, but in the 1 month that we've had, liquidity has been rising quite sharply. So to have a sort of bear market year in a sharply increasing global liquidity environment would be a little bit strange. You can flick this onto Western denominated if you think Western, West is more of a sort of Bitcoin focused hemisphere, if you like, and it looks very, very much a different chart. We sort of had the enormous, great big liquidity pump in COVID times, sort of 2020, and sort of huge tightening in 2022, sort of lasting all the way until the beginning of 2025, past the Trump election, and sort of bottomed a couple of weeks before his inauguration. And then sort of for the last year, it sort of rose up early part of the year, held for the summer, and has been rising, and sort of again for the last month, first month of 2026, has been rising. So yeah, for this to be a sort of bear market year, 4-year cycle, I'm just not quite seeing it. Obviously this, doesn't exactly have correlation. Well, I suppose Bitcoin price went up when this rocketed up and did sort of come down. You could maybe sort of widen this a little bit, but I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of correlation there at all. But it is still Western facing global liquidity, and for the last year at least, it is still rising. So who knows? But red is red, of course, whatever we think or whatever we try and predict, and it's been a red week. So yeah, 12.3% down on Bitcoin. That is quite a sharp drop. We don't sort of get too many of these drops now that it's in ETFs and is more of a sort of institutional asset. And yeah, we've seen some fairly strong numbers in the red for the altcoins. Nearly 20% off Solana, 19% off Ethereum. A lot of them just sort of around 20% really. Chainlink, Helium, and then well Cardano. I still keep on the chart just to keep an eye on it, and XRP and things. Some of my older tokens. Solana ecosystem tokens sort of got whacked a bit harder. 24% on Metaplex, 27% on Radium, and Honey 24%. It's only 140 quid now. All of these fast going to zero at the moment, sort of in the 90% down now. But who knows? I still think there's potential for, well, Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum. I'll say I'm not really sure about all the others. I suppose if Solana does really well, then you'd expect the sort of, well, maybe older ecosystem coins to some of them to follow, but yeah, Bitcoin and Ethereum at least I would expect to do somewhat well this year if liquidity keeps coming in, or of course even the long-term correlation to sort of global liquidity and M2 could die down, but I really can't see it. The thesis sort of does hold true as to why it would go up with global liquidity, so. We'll see. Potentially, it's a matter of time. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. How you're enjoying this enormous bloodbath. If you're buying anything, it's not something that I'm buying into at the moment. So still buying a little bit of Hive on the miners side in the stock portfolio, but not really too interested in buying certainly any of these altcoins or anything, and wouldn't want to be touching my Bitcoin just for tax purposes. It complicates things. So there you go. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.